Welcome back to a new episode of Let's Talk Golf. I'm your host, PGA professional Mark Guttenberg, and Let's Talk Golf is a bi-weekly podcast featuring all things golf. This week's episode is very important, very special. Did you know that there are currently over 3.7 million disabled veterans in the United States, and many of them are struggling to find a sense of normalcy and reconnect with civilian life and their families? Well, golf has been used as a medium by several organizations to try to get these veterans involved and active duty members involved. And we have with us today a special guest, PGA member Mr. Steve Greiner. Steve has been the head professional at Fort Belvoir Golf Club in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And today he's going to talk to us about some of the programs he's been involved with that will highlight how they use golf as a medium to get these guys back. Steve is a good friend of mine, and he has been a golf professional for 17 years at the Fort Belvoir Golf Club in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, the Army base. Steve is going to share with us some of the groups that he has formulated, some of the awards that he has won, and most importantly, the service that he provides for these military personnel. So let's get started on this most important episode. Welcome back to this episode of Let's Talk Golf. You know, when it comes to service to our country, perhaps the greatest debt of gratitude is owed to those that serve in the different branches of military, defending our freedom and risking their lives so that we can enjoy living as we do as Americans. I'm honored to have as my guest PGA professional Steve Greiner, who has dedicated his life to giving back to our wounded warriors and disabled veterans. Steve, welcome to Let's Talk Golf.
Thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure to be on.
Well, Steve, I want the audience to kind of get to know you a little bit before we start talking about some of your programs. So first off, when did you first become interested in the game of golf, and how did it lead you to making the career choice to become a PGA professional?
Well, I started golf very young, and in fact, you could say I'm a product of Arnold Palmer. My dad and his friends were all World War II veterans. They're all from Brooklyn, New York. Didn't know golf from their elbow, and but Arnold ushered in the TV era, and they all saw him, and like many people, were captivated, and they formed a golf club, and they played at Bethpage Park. They formed the Early Birds Golf Club, 12 Brooklyn guys, wow. And when I was about 9 years old, they showed me golf, and I started caddying at Bethpage Park because I grew up on Long Island. They moved out to Long Island when I was a youngster, and so, but that's kind of grow the game and Arnold Palmer's role, and so all these guys would never have thought about playing golf, and TV and Arnold Palmer came on, and I was just a little guy, and they showed me the game.
Wow, that's very funny. It kind of parallels my career a little bit. When I was 11, my dad took me to the U.S. Open at Congressional, and the first guy I saw was Arnold Palmer, and the charisma just oozing from the guy. And I knew I was going to be a pro, just even back in those days. Well, that's really good lead-in. Tell us about some of the jobs you've had in the golf industry.
Yeah, my dad was a terrific dad. He passed away in 2010, and he introduced me to everything, music, all sports. And he just thought it was important that I do something. I could find what it was that I liked, but he introduced me to everything. Basketball, baseball, football, guitar, you name it. And but once he showed me golf, which was after baseball and football, I just took to it right away. I was hooked. And so, like I said, at a young age, they were bringing me out to caddy at Bethpage Park, and we'd get in line at 3 o'clock in the morning. Some of those stories that you read in Golf Magazine or Golf Digest before tee times. And then I ended up started caddying at Bethpage, and then there's a lot of private clubs on Long Island. Long Island is one of the original places when golf started in America. A lot of private clubs that are 100, 125 years old. And I caddied at a whole bunch of clubs, the Garden City Golf Club, the Muttontown Club, Tam O'Shanter, and of course Bethpage, and played the black maybe 1,000 times growing up, pre-U.S. Open years, of course. And so I had a lot of caddying jobs pretty young. By 13 or 14, I was caddying double bags at a number of clubs.
Now, we're different age, but in my era, when I caddied double bags, I got $5 a bag. How about you?
I kind of remember $8, and then carts were just starting, driving carts, and you'd have a couple of people you'd four caddy for, and you'd carry doubles. I kind of remember maybe in the mid to late '70s, about $20 a loop, and then
All right, let's not date
It
ourselves
went up.
too much.
It went up pretty fast from there, but it was
Yeah.
$8 a bag, so
Yeah.
that's close to five.
That's amazing inflation. Okay, and then I think you worked at Golfdom for a while before you went to Fort Belvoir, right? Was that the job right before?
Yeah, I moved from Long Island in my late 20s. After college, I went and played amateur golf, and then did turn pro and play some mini tours down in Florida, mini tour events like the Winter Tour and stuff like that. And then around 1988, I moved to Virginia, and I've been down here. I guess we're going on the 30th anniversary is coming pretty soon. But the first place I worked when I moved to Virginia was the Tyson's Washington Golf Center, which
Right.
today is known as Golfdom.
Gotcha. So for 17 years, you were the PGA head professional at Fort Belvoir, which is a military base that includes a golf course in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Now, seeing all those veterans and active duty military personnel, you must have learned a lot about the military lifestyle. What impact did that have on you, and how did that motivate you to start a program known as the Fort Belvoir Wounded Warriors Golf Program?
Well, it's interesting. That's a great question. I never intended to be at a military golf course. And what happened when I was at Golfdom was originally I was thinking that I would focus on sales and maybe be a rep for one of the manufacturers and maintain an amateur career because I really enjoyed playing amateur golf. And then when I was working at Golfdom and I was giving it some thought, because this is really the first job after I said, hey, I'm not going to play the tour, or that's not the path for me. So then I started thinking, and I was thinking about sales, and I was thinking about the golf industry and what I wanted to do. And then I just kind of by chance got involved in doing some teaching and really got hooked on the idea of coaching. And so I did a lot of teaching. And then the job at Fort Belvoir presented itself, and that was in the late 90s, and I went to Fort Belvoir. And at first, I was just going to be there for a little while I planned out. And like a lot of people, I wanted to be at a real nice club or a real upscale club. And then 9/11 hit. And that was what had the greatest impact, because now all of a sudden, here I am in Washington, D.C., near Walter Reed Hospital, and I'm serving the military. And a lot of the people that I'm serving are getting deployed. And then eventually people are coming back injured, and there's a warrior unit on Fort Belvoir. So I kind of got hooked on the whole atmosphere and being part of what was a pretty dynamic time to be at a military installation.
Wow, yeah, that was the impetus for a lot of us. 911 really hit home. How about giving us some of the particulars of the program that you started, the Wounded Warriors Golf Program, that you started in 2008, I believe?
Yeah, so I ended up the head professional at Fort Belvoir, and again, I was very much teaching and coaching oriented. So there I am at Fort Belvoir, 9/11 hits, and I'm serving the military, and I'm teaching and I'm coaching, and then I got hooked up with the warrior unit. What happens when people get injured in the military, they get assigned to a warrior unit. They can be under a couple of different names, warrior battalions and warrior units, but they get assigned to a unit, and their job's to get better. And so Fort Belvoir had a warrior unit. And in fact, what happened 3 or 4 years after 9/11, the old Walter Reed closed, and a big hospital and a battalion of wounded warriors were moved to Fort Belvoir. So now I had 250 wounded warriors living right next to the golf course. And so it became a big deal. And Fort Belvoir became part of the new Walter Reed, and their mission was to be cutting edge in the care of wounded, ill, and injured is how they refer to it in the military. And so I started thinking, well, why not have golf's version of that? The golf course was right next to the Warrior Battalion, and I was having people come from Walter Reed and from Fort Belvoir to the golf program, and I thought, at first I was just teaching and helping out, but then I started to think that if Fort Belvoir is specializing in being on the cutting edge of care for wounded warriors, how about having golf's version? So I sort of embarked on that goal, and we recruited, and the numbers went up when you got a battalion of 250 people. So that's kind of what I started to do, and I took advantage of a lot of the resources that I had. I had access to physical therapists, I had access to doctors, I had access to the outreach people that care for them. I was able to get to talk to experts in how prosthetics work and how special carts and equipment work. And so we got involved with various groups like the Amputee Association and Disabled Sports, and we put together some trainings, and it just kind of mushroomed from there. And I have to say that the support for the troops is wonderful, and it hasn't been difficult getting teachers to help you, and it hasn't been tough getting people to support you. So it kind of mushroomed from there.
Well, that's a great lead-in. I was curious at how many PGA professionals volunteer for the weekly clinics that you offer on Saturdays, which is probably one of the busiest days of the week for a golf professional, and how they were trained to work with disabled veterans. I know I was fortunate enough, I think it was 2 years ago, to attend a 2-day training. One of them, I think you mentioned already, the group, and I was just fascinated about what really goes into it. So, again, how many pros do you use, and how do you get them to understand how to work with these different types of injuries?
Yeah, we have a pool of about, I'd say, 18 to 20 professionals, and we usually use 8 to 10 a week. The program has grown to the point, like this spring, we have 87 people registered in the program. And attendance is a whole topic onto itself, because a lot of them are dealing with post-traumatic stress. They're dealing with traumatic brain injury. And, of course, we know about physical injuries, gunshot wounds and missing limbs and so forth. So attendance is a topic onto itself. We have found that you really have to kind of stay engaged with the battalion and with the disabled veteran community to keep the attendance up. So we have 87 registered for the spring, and that's been pretty constant for the last 3 or 4 years. So about 200 people have been going through the program the last 3 or 4 years, and I would say about an average of 50 show up week to week, and we have 8 pros that come and help us. Now, Fort Belvoir specializes in traumatic brain injury, so we don't have a lot of people using the special carts. We do have some. We don't have a lot of people with prosthetics. We did in the beginning, but the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of the people coming to Belvoir, traumatic brain injury, so their issues are balance and a lot of cognitive type things. But the reason why I mention that is because you don't need, sometimes when you're teaching amputees or spinal cord people who are using the special paragolfers or solo riders, they look like little adaptable mini golf carts that they use to play golf. You don't need as many instructors. So in that case, if I had a lot more spinal cord, special cart, and amputees, I probably would need more instructors. I might need 15, 12, 13, 14 instructors each week. But that hasn't been the case lately. So about 8 instructors.
So, I've taught a few amputees myself, both military and non, and physics is physics. As far as like back to the training a little bit, I don't know, exactly how you get these guys capable of working with everybody, but a golf club has a design. There's certain experimental phases of working with these guys that I've had where you say, that's not going to work. And a lot of it's guesswork, but isn't so much of it, just you putting your heart and soul and caring about these individuals and giving them some hope that they can do something with that golf club to make a game out of it.
Yeah, you have to get very creative. But I would say that, at least from my perspective, that teaching is still quite similar to anybody that you would teach. They're normal people who maybe have gone through extraordinary things, but most instructors will assess someone physically. People have had knee replacements, they've had hip replacements, they've had backs fused, and they've had all kinds of serious injuries, eyesight problems, and so forth. So a lot of the people that we're dealing with, you could say maybe the injuries are a little bit more severe, but it's still teaching golf. Because of the severity of the injuries, you have to get creative. I've never been one to teach a model. I feel like everyone's an individual that has their own strengths and weaknesses, and so you apply the things that you've learned are successful, but you find the right ones for those people. But to a large degree, what you're really doing is learning, in the case of amputees, let's say, what the prosthetics can do. When the instructor knows, does it rotate, does it not, is it above the knee, below the knee, above the elbow, below the elbow. When you learn about the prosthetic, then you kind of weigh that into your teaching like you're teaching anyone. And so, and then of course you have to learn what the paragolfer and the solo rider, those are special carts. Mm-hmm. And some people, for example, one of my students is a double amputee above the knee, and he actually plays off the back of a special cart that kind of puts him into a hitting position and braces him in, and he plays from there. So you have to learn what that cart can do. Yeah. But once you know what the equipment does, and then you know the injuries, you get creative. And there might be some trial and error. Mm-hmm. I've had an amputee above the knee play righty and lefty because he was a right-handed golfer, and it was his left leg. And, of course, you finish the swing on your left leg, and so he had a lot of difficulty doing that. And so we even tried left-handed to see if he could swing through the ball better. And eventually he ended up, we got creative, and he ended up choosing to stay and play right-handed. But to a large degree, I think an experienced PGA professional will adapt like the person. That's the word that they use today, as opposed to disabled or handicapped. You'll hear the word adaptive golf. And so I think the instructors adapt. So to a large degree, I'm just helping them learn about the equipment. And then that's what our trainings focus on, the equipment. And one of the things that I'm blessed with, I do have access to physical therapists, caregivers, doctors. Even the doctor of neurology at Fort Belvoir comes to our program because, again, a lot of them are traumatic brain injury. And I do counsel a lot of the instructors to be careful using sports psychology or golf psychology on someone that might be suffering from post-traumatic stress. There's a fine line there. So when the therapists and the doctors come to our program, they're really there for the instructors. They're not there for the students. They're there for the instructors, because you don't want to maybe cross the line with someone who's struggling. Most of them get cleared, but suicide and severe depression has touched our program.
I'm sure, and I want to touch on that a little bit too. When I went through the 2-day training, I was amazed at all the aids that they have. Like, there was one guy couldn't close his hand around a golf club, and there was a special glove with a Velcro that closed it for him, and all of a sudden he was able to swing in a way he wasn't. Another organization, Stand Up and Play, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, had a special cart that each one of us,
paragolfer.
Each one of us had to sit in and try to hit balls from there. And it didn't take me long to realize I couldn't keep my left arm straight very long in a follow through to hit any kind of speed. So there are so many ways to help these guys and ladies. Now, did this program exist anywhere else when you started at Fort Belvoir in 2008, or were you the first in the country to do this?
No, I don't think I was the first. Being at a military golf course, especially one that was part of Walter Reed, and Fort Belvoir became such an important part of the care for wounded warriors, I was kind of doing my job. My customers, you serve your customers in golf. You learn about customer service. So my customers were people getting deployed. But I know of a number of people up in Maryland. We've done work with Salute Military Golf, and then out in Iowa, there's a retired Army person, Jim Dickerson, does great things. David Windsor down in Florida did a lot of work with the Tampa area. They have an installation. I want to say it's Air Force, MacDill Air Force Base. And they have a large installation. They have a hospital and so forth. So I would say that we're maybe one of the pioneers, one of the group. But I even have articles of golf being used for therapy going back to World War II from an Augusta newspaper. So did we possibly, with a handful of other people, get to where we took it to another level? I think we've been part of that, but we're not the only ones.
Sure. Well, can you give me maybe just one story of a veteran or somebody that came through the program and what it meant to them? Just kind of give us an example of the difference or the impact that it might have had. Anything stick out at all? Just a single story?
Yeah, well, actually, a number of them do, but one of them that's pretty common. We had a Colonel Foda, female, that got severe head trauma from Haiti on a peacekeeping mission. So there's a lot more going on than just Iraq or Afghanistan. Sure. There's other things that happen. People who are training and getting ready for, to serve if they're needed. But here you had someone on a peacekeeping mission. And when she came to the program, she was really skittish and wouldn't talk. And just kind of stare at you. And didn't really want to do the golf program, but someone at the battalion sort of made her get involved. And today she's a volunteer for the program, and she comes and greets everyone at the program on Saturday mornings. And so she's almost become an ambassador. She's gone to Ireland. Awesome. She's gone to Ireland to play golf. And the reason why I bring that one up is that she's gone ahead. A number of people have gone ahead, and they're in the program still. We're trying to make it. And by the way, it's not just the 16 events that we do every Saturday. We've gotten sponsorship for a playing program. We have a league on Wednesday. We have guest speakers. We're able to put them into events. There's all kinds of golf events throughout the area, usually raising money for charity, some military, some not. So we've tried to take this program to an everyday program to where they stay in the golf community. And but Colonel Foda would be one that comes to mind, and a number of others. Sergeant Major Don Martin, same thing. He was in the medical unit at for the Army. I'm sorry, not for Fort Belvoir, but he was in the medical unit in Iraq and Afghanistan. And part of being in the medical unit was he saw a lot of death. In fact, most military people that have gone through the stuff that these people have gone through don't say much. I think a lot of people experience that. They don't boast, or they don't like to talk about it, or even if they're heroes and saved a lot of people, they seem to be very quiet. But I do play golf a lot with Sergeant Major Martin, and one day we were just talking, and I was trying to get a little information out of him, and he just said, I've seen so much death that I basically just shut down. And so he went through the golf program, and now he's also coming on Saturdays and greeting people, and he's been in the program for 3 or 4 years, and he represents the program in all kinds of charity events throughout the region. So, lot of examples of that.
Yeah,
That.
I could do this for hours with you. Unfortunately, it's not that long a show, but Steve, it must have been so gratifying to have an impact and make a difference in the lives of so many veterans and their families. And in 2014, you were recognized by the MAPGA when you won the Player Development Award. And I'm going to just read what that award is. It's an award that bestows special recognition on a PGA professional for exemplary contributions and achievements in the area of player development and for extraordinary efforts in conducting and or supporting Play Golf America initiatives. This award considers the PGA professional's growth of the game leadership, commitment at the section and national levels, plus the impact he made at his or her own facility. How did that make you feel, winning that award?
Well, it's all pretty special, and I've said this before. May have said it to you when we've played golf in the past, but you don't set out to help the military, especially wounded, ill, and injured, for awards. And
right, of course not.
It's just something that I was living because I happened to be in a place I didn't expect to be, and thought it was transitional, and then made it a career. And I've kind of got hooked by the whole thing. To know, and they tell me this, to know that we've had the impact that we've had, and when I say we have a big team now. I may have started it back in 2008, but we have a pretty big team of people now. But to know that we're having that impact, and we talked about a couple of people and what happened with them going through the program and how it affected them, but there's other stories that are more serious that are harder to talk about, like one of our soldiers earned a set of pings for his work in the program, for coming to class a lot and doing the things that he needed to do, and he earned a set of free pings. God bless Ping Golf Company for that. We've given probably $400,000 in ping clubs over the last 7 or 8 years, but actually, those set of clubs, up until recently, sat in the back room because he committed suicide. So there were three people tried to commit suicide. One did. So it's a very serious thing. And we're not doctors. We're not therapists. This is not a medical program. We're assisting, but we are having an impact because the mentoring and the coaching, the training, and the skills that PGA professionals develop really works well, and the instructors take ownership, and they become part of a community, and they get help in other ways just from learning golf. They get contacts, and they build a network, and to know that we've had that impact is really, it's awesome. And the awards, the only thing with the awards that I've come to realize that winning an award, and there's things we hadn't talked about. We include the families because the families are affected, so they're in the program, and we kind of built a military first tee into the Wounded Warrior program. But to know we're having that impact is an awesome thing that I'm really proud of, and glad that I've had an opportunity to give back and to be part of the solution moving forward. And awards at least help bring awareness and to the program. So, but it is a little awkward because they're the heroes.
Well, you're very humble, and you make very valid points. But I'm not going to let you go on that just yet, because as if that wasn't enough to make you feel like you were making a difference, in 2016, you were the recipient of the PGA National Patriot Award. And this honor goes to a PGA professional who embodies patriotism and shows dedication to the men and women who've served in the United States Armed Forces. Section awards are wonderful, and they're one thing, but this one represents your contributions on a national level. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'd like you to just tell us about the ceremony where you had to give a speech in front of all these PGA members, how you handled your nerves speaking at the annual National PGA Awards banquet. That must have been a little bit taxing at the least.
Yeah, a national award with the PGA, I kind of got like a feeling of what it would be like to be at like the ESPYs or,
Yeah.
they did it in New York City and there were a lot of people and they really do it well. And it was kind of nerve wracking. They did do a tribute video and, uh, when they played the video, you don't see the video ahead of time. So they play the video, and that sort of got my mind off of because I don't necessarily get up in front of a lot of TV cameras and 1,000 people and all that went into that awards night. It was a little bit nerve wracking, and but they showed this tribute video, and it was very emotional, and you
And
know
then you have to speak.
then you have to speak. But I would say that the topic once I get up on a stage or once I get talking about what we're experiencing and what we're trying to do, the emotions and the passions of what we're doing take over. So I wouldn't say that at the awards night I was really all that nervous. I thought it went well. The feedback was wonderful, and I think it was an opportunity for me to create that awareness that I talked about. But I would say just one uh, personal note that was pretty exciting for me. Never after all that, it's funny how little things mean a lot to you. But when I was done, I got whisked into a room by the Golf Channel, and they filmed a piece for the Golf Channel that was going to air a couple of days later on Veterans Day, and I wasn't sure exactly how they were going to use it. They just told me they'd let me know, and it would be on Veterans Day. And Jimmy Roberts was there, and Dave Marr, and all these people were in this studio that they made in the hotel, which was also a little nerve wracking. And they filmed this piece, and then all of a sudden I got a link, and on the morning drive on the Golf Channel, they actually went to the Tomb of the Unknown, and they were showing the ceremony on Veterans Day at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And then from the clip of the Tomb of the Unknown, they went to me being interviewed about what golf's trying to do and what our team's trying to do to help wounded warriors and to help military families. And so for me to see a very professional piece on a major network like the Golf Channel that had me associated with the Tomb of the Unknown and the ceremony on Veterans Day at the Tomb of the Unknown blew me away. And so every once in a while I go and I YouTube and I put that on. And I never thought that in my lifetime I would ever see me being associated with the Tomb of the Unknown and a veteran ceremony, and the fact that we've somehow tied golf and golf's contributions, to the military.
You did a great job. I saw all the clips mentioned, and you represented the military and the PGA very well. And Steve, you're not one to rest on your laurels, and now you have a new initiative, and you're the co-founder and executive director of something called Links to Freedom. What can you tell us about this program and why you felt the need to start something new?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and that goes to the heart of a number of experiences that I've had since 2008. But unfortunately, the Army was not in a position, or the U.S. government, Department of Defense, was not in a position to fund adaptive sports, and so the golf program was not funded by my employer. My intention all along was for this to be a Defense Department Army program. That was who I was working for, and that was my goal. But unfortunately, we really couldn't fund it because of a lot of things, and it was no one's fault. It is what it is. I had hoped that maybe the government, and I tried, might exempt Wounded Warrior programs, because not only were they unable to fund it, but there was a lot of rules against raising funds and soliciting as an employee of the U.S. government. So here I have this program that just through sweat, just through effort, we rose above and we grew this great program, but we really didn't feel we could do it the way we thought it should be done. And now we're seeing the impact it's having. So now we're really committed. This is a great program. Golf is a very unique and terrific sport to help our wounded, ill, and injured recover and their families. So that's where Links to Freedom was born. And we never really were able to get the exemptions. So with a partner, one of my volunteers, one of that great team that I referred to, Lieutenant Colonel Rob Kuhn, he was watching what I was going through, and he went out and formed Links to Freedom. And the purpose really is to focus on Fort Belvoir and Washington, D.C. But if we're successful, and the military installations, because there's civilians that are wounded, ill, and injured. There's retired. There's all kinds of niches within this subject matter, within this topic. There's people with disabilities. So we're very military oriented. We're very active and retired, wounded, ill, and injured oriented. So we're going to try to go ahead and raise the money through Links to Freedom and, for lack of a better term, gift it back to the military, to Fort Belvoir, and grow the program. And if we're successful raising money, we'll partner and help others that are in this field. And PGA has gotten more involved recently with PGA Reach and PGA Hope, and we mentioned some of the other people that are doing great work. And so if we're successful being leaders in this, then we'll also partner with others. And an example would be, we were contacted by the Naval Hospital out in San Diego that they don't have a golf program. And so it's kind of long distance, but we knew a couple of people out in the San Diego area, and we've raised a little bit of money, nothing major, and we're helping a couple of golf pros get the funding to do a program, because San Diego and Balboa Naval Hospital is much like Fort Belvoir in Washington, D.C., and so we're helping them get a program going out there.
Wonderful stuff, wonderful stuff. I want you listeners to go to linkstofreedom.org. Check out the website. I've done it myself. Read about the hero model. We don't have enough time to go into all the details about that, but what you're doing is just unbelievable. And you've already touched on this a little bit, but there are several golf programs for military personnel, including the Wounded Warriors, Links to Freedom, Salute Military Golf, Folds of Honor. There's a group called Serve Our Willing Warriors. It's a group I've had a small involvement with, where they take people from Walter Reed Hospital and bring them out to this 40-acre home for a sense of normalcy. And I've tried to introduce a little golf to them. But how hard is it to get funding for these types of programs? How do you raise the money to keep them going? Just to, briefly, because you've touched on it a little bit, but it must be.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. One, I will tell you, there is a lot of charitable 501c3s, they call them, doing things for the military, but there's not that many that are actually using the game of golf as rehabilitation and therapy. And so I mentioned a couple of the groups that are doing that, but there's not that many. Folds of Honor, a lot of the groups that are helping the military are helping other things like education or a home. Another big one that a lot of charities are doing are jobs. So the one thing I just want your listeners to know, this is using the game of golf to help families recover, reconnect, and reunite. So, and there are not a lot of people using the game itself to help the military. But as far as raising money, it is challenging. We've raised enough to cover Fort Belvoir. We're helping the Air Force at Joint Base Andrews, and I mentioned we're helping a program in San Diego, and actually in Salt Lake we're helping them with some funding and some expertise. But we really don't have the funds to go beyond that at this particular point, and it is challenging. And I would say that adaptive sports is a little bit like a yo-yo. And what I mean by that is jobs, houses, and education. And one thing we didn't mention, a lot of participants in our program are Gold Star families, where They lost a member of the family who was killed in action. So those families have to heal, but sometimes they've lost a parent, a man or a woman, a mom or a dad, and they have to put their kids through school and they have to pay their mortgage. And so what we have found is that a lot of people are interested in supporting us, but I think homes and education and jobs have sometimes been a priority over adaptive sports. But the other problem is the VA is kind of overwhelmed. And we still have 22 people a day committing suicide. And a lot of those people are still from Vietnam. And a lot of the people that live today are because the equipment is so good, they may not have lived in past conflicts. So now they have traumatic brain injury and depression and self-medication and all the things that go with that. And this is going to linger. There's thousands of people and then their families for years and years. So adaptive sports sometimes moves back up the pecking order because these people need long-term physical therapy. And so I think sometimes adaptive sports gets kind of put aside, and then sometimes I think it gets prioritized, and to a large degree, I think my job's becoming creating that awareness that people need to be involved in a long-term activity for their mental health.
Wow. Well, we only have about a minute or two left, but so I want to make sure that you get a chance to tell our listeners how they can get involved, including any military veterans out there that might want to get started in your Links to Freedom program.
Yeah, I mean, we have linkstofreedom.org is the website. I think you mentioned that. We also have a Facebook page, Links to Freedom. We do have a volunteer program. We are starting to utilize volunteers differently. At first, they helped with the program, fetch water and sunscreen and shuttle people to and from the practice facility and keep an eye on safety. But now we have people that are helping us with our social media and helping with pictures and are helping with fundraising and are helping. So we do have a volunteer program that's pretty comprehensive. So you can contact me, Steve Greiner. My email is Greiner, Greiner, at PGA.com, or Greiner at linkstofreedom.org. Either one, that's my email. You can contact me, and you can donate or get further information on Facebook or on the website.
Wow. Well, Steve, I'm very impressed by all, very humbled by all this. You really lead a purposeful life, and I've known you for over 25 years. It's an honor and a privilege to call you my friend. You're a great American, and you embody what makes this country so great. So thanks for coming on the show. I wish you much success in all your future endeavors.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be on, and it's always a pleasure to be able to tell our story.
Well, that concludes this episode of Let's Talk Golf. I think Steve Greiner gave us some great insights on this most important topic and how we can get our military personnel back up and leading a purposeful life. And I hope you'll go to his Links to Freedom website, linkstofreedom.org. Find out how you can participate, whether it's a financial donation or just maybe showing up at one of these events. This is a very important service that we owe back to our military personnel, and golf is a great medium to do that. So I'm your host, PGA professional Mark Guttenberg. I'm glad you tuned into this episode. And don't forget, if you have any comments or ideas or suggestions for shows, go to my website, guttenbergsgolf.com, and don't forget to give us a comment or just let us know what you think of the show. We can be found on LinkedIn, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Facebook, Twitter, my website. We're all over the place, so we hope you'll tune in 2 weeks for the next episode of Let's Talk Golf.